You won't believe what happened next. A billionaire's credit card got declined at a lonely gas station, and what happened afterward changed the lives of everyone involved. For good. Alexander Mitchell, 42 years old, stood frozen by the pump at a Shell station off Route 65 in rural Texas. Under the glaring afternoon sun, his stiff-collared shirt felt suffocating, but it wasn't the heat that weighed on him. It was the attendant's voice, flat, bored, rehearsed. Transaction denied. Try another card. He tried again with the same outcome. Then another card. Declined again. The queue behind him fidgeted. Whispers rippled through the line. A Mercedes, and he can't even pay for $23 of gas? A middle-aged woman laughed. Loud enough for him to hear. Probably just another one of those fake influencers trying to show off. He exhaled, heart pounding. Not from embarrassment, but from frustration. This wasn't a mistake or a bank error. His cards had been deliberately blocked by someone who had uncovered where he was and wanted to send a message. The attendant cleared her throat. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the line." The words hit him like cold steel. The humiliation would have been unbearable. Except then, two small voices cut through the noise. "We can pay for him," the girls said. They spoke together, stepping out from behind a family sedan, their colorful braids bobbing as they walked forward. They were 8 years old, dressed in bright, mismatched clothes, and they carried a small pink purse that jingled as they walked. The attendant seemed to freeze. The murmurs stopped. The world tilted sideways. Two black girls offering money to a white billionaire in decline. It was surreal, powerful, and clean, all at once. Their mother's voice cracked open the moment. "Girls, come back here right this instant," she whispered, mortified. But Grace and Hope stood tall. Grace, the more confident of the two, held up the purse. "We have $15.60, she said, looking at her sister, who nodded. "It's not enough, but our grandma always says, when someone can help, even a little, they should." The station went silent. Even the hum of cars waiting in line seemed respectful. He knelt down a little so he could see them at eye level. His chest ached. He had lost everything that mattered: his company, his reputation, his sense of self. But here were two little girls giving all they had. Tears welled up in his eyes. He swallowed hard. "What are your names?" he asked, voice thick. "Grace," said the first. "Hope," said the second. "Grace and Hope," he murmured to himself. Those weren't just names. They were a message. Behind them, the line shifted uncomfortably. A few people discreetly pulled out phones. Because none of them knew the truth, Alexander Mitchell had stumbled onto something enormous. Something that tied his former company, Technocore Industries, to unsanctioned surveillance by the government, massive data manipulation schemes, shadowy contracts, backdoor algorithms tracking citizens without consent. He had pulled back the curtain on his own empire, only to be kicked out and cast as insane. This gas station was not his worst defeat, it was his crucible, and these two girls had just offered him something he hadn't felt in years. Grace. Before he could say anything, the attendant interrupted again, embarrassment softening her tone. "I'm so sorry. That was unusual." But he waved her off, turning back to Grace and Hope. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you." They shuffled away to their mother, who looked mortified but also oddly proud. Alexander looked out at the dusty Texas road, at the small scene of humanity in front of him, and made a decision that would change everything. Within minutes, someone had posted the moment to social media. A photo of him kneeling with his head bowed, the twins standing with their purse, appeared with a caption, "Billionaire beggar needs help from kids." The post exploded. The hashtag #DCBillionaireBeggar trended within an hour. The comments ranged from mocking to outraged. A privileged white man brought to his knees by two 8-year-olds. Priceless. Karma's a gas pump. He deserves every penny of embarrassment. At 10:43 that night, He received a message from the only person who could have orchestrated all of this: Jonathan Kane. Jonathan was his former best friend of 15 years, his co-founder, now CEO of Technocore. The message was simple. Seeing the news, disappearing didn't work. Maybe some secrets are too big for just one person to handle. The words didn't say danger, but implied it in black and white. Alexander closed his eyes and remembered the look in Jonathan's eyes the day he'd walked away from the office. That cold, exact calculation. Some contracts are delicate, Jonathan had said, leaning back in his leather chair. Some secrets can't get out. Oversized bankers had supported him before. Now, none would return his calls. Investors whispered behind closed doors. His name was being erased, but never trust a man who calls off the wolf while building cages, because in the months before his disappearance, he had done the opposite. He had gathered evidence, mapped surveillance networks, compiled secret recordings, traced money. He planted a digital dead man switch. If he didn't enter a secure code every 72 hours, everything would go live across global news networks. So when he saw that the world had twisted his humiliation into mockery, he saw also his opportunity. The narrative could shift with truth, and truth was on his side. 3 days later, at 2:15 in the morning, he sat in a tiny roadside cafe on Dallas's edge. He watched a trucker slurp coffee. A waitress cleaned dishes, chewing gum with mechanical patience. And then she walked in, Samantha Torres, investigative journalist for the Washington Herald, a woman who'd won 2 Pulitzers for exposing government corruption. Her hair was tied up, her backpack worn, but she carried gear that could rival an entire news bureau. She looked up at him and said softly, "Alexander Mitchell, I thought you were dead." He set a briefcase on the table. Inside there were documents, bank transfers, algorithms, audio recordings, contracts, surveillance logs, metadata, whistleblowers' statements, irrefutable proof. Samantha leaned over and flipped through the pages. Her breath hitched once, then again. If this is real, you could bring down not just the company but an entire system. You have to let me vet and publish this carefully. He nodded. Every word is true. I'm not just trying to survive. I need to protect 2 kids who did more for me in 5 minutes than nearly everyone else in 15 years. She looked up, understanding the weight of what that meant. Let's make it undeniable. Then it can't be framed as revenge, it will be justice. A short silence. A beginning. The next morning, he drove to the elementary school where Grace and Hope went, a modest red brick building with a playground that smelled of rubber mulch and possibility. He didn't approach the students. He asked to see the principal, Dorothy Washington, a woman who'd taught there for 30 years. She looked surprised but concerned. "I'm worried for their safety," he said gently. "Some powerful people don't forgive or forget. I'd like to fund security upgrades, cameras, fencing, and also create a fund for the students." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. He offered $250,000 of his own money. "These girls reminded me what matters. If anything happened to them, I'd never forgive myself." She nodded slowly, voice trembling. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting them." Meanwhile, at Technocore's gleaming headquarters, Jonathan Caney sat in the boardroom. Marketing reported that the humiliation campaign was working. Stock was rising. Investors believed Alexander had cracked. He asked about the twins. His head of security, ex-CIA, smiled. "We can target their families, quietly. Harassment, bureaucracy, social pressure, make helping him look like manipulation." Jonathan leaned back. "Do it. Cleanly." He looked out the window at the city skyline, satisfied. But he didn't know that in the quiet of his hidden location, Alexander had used old backdoors in Technocore's systems, backdoors he himself built, to siphon every internal message, every threat, every plan to a secure server outside their reach. Emails, meeting recordings, bank transfers, all automatically forwarded. At midnight, Samantha called again. Her voice was tight. They're targeting the families. Nothing overtly violent, but intimidation, gaslighting. They want to use whatever you do for those kids against you. Alexander's hand clenched. Samantha continued, and I traced the paid memes. Not just Technicore, at least 4 other corporations plus media firms are funding the smear campaign. He closed his eyes. This was no longer just war. It was a cage of social media, and threat. But now he had leverage, and he knew how to use it. He activated his network: ethical hackers, journalists, whistleblowers, legal teams, nonprofit allies. The machines began to move in secret. Exactly at the moment the Technicore board convened, every smartphone buzzed. News alerts poured in. Explosive revelations. Former CEO exposes mass surveillance of 200 million Americans. Across the nation, the story broke on major networks. Samantha appeared on air, evidence in hand. Technicore's stock plunged. Within an hour, FBI was issuing search warrants. The evidence that Jonathan thought hidden was now public record and bulletproof. Metadata, signed documents, voice-authenticated threats, bank transactions. No story could spin that. In the boardroom, Jonathan's face drained of blood. They have everything, the security chief said. Jonathan stared numb, his power vaporizing. That evening, Grace and Hope were on live television. Their mother, voice steady, said, "My daughters taught the world about kindness. The fact that someone would threaten them, just for being kind, shows how far we've strayed." Hope looked at the camera with astonishing innocence and clarity. "Sometimes bad people just forget how to be good. Maybe now they'll remember." Millions watched. There was no turning back. Jonathan slipped away to a relative's apartment. Calls stopped. Money froze. His marriage unraveled. His empire evaporated. He sent one text: "I hope one day I'll be worthy of forgiveness." Alexander, by contrast, had launched the Grace and Hope Foundation in Austin, a nonprofit to protect whistleblowers, fund justice, and support ethics in technology. He traded skyscraper views for the view of a playground where children of all races played together. 6 months later, the foundation had processed over 200 corruption reports, helped expose billions in fraud, and catalyzed dozens of arrests. Grace and Hope were national symbols of compassion and courage. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony of a new digital library, funded by the foundation, Alexander knelt to speak to them. "Mr. Mitchell," Grace said shyly, "we still have our $15.60 saved up in case someone needs help again." Alexander laughed, tears in his eyes. "You two didn't start this," he said. "You lit the spark. I just helped it grow." And so the best revenge was not destruction, but creation. He built something stronger, kinder, more enduring than any boardroom power or crushing verdict. He transformed a moment of humiliation into a movement for justice. He proved that when you lose everything you thought mattered, the universe sometimes sends 2 8-year-old angels with pockets full of change to show you what matters most. The best story doesn't end with vengeance. It begins with grace, and sometimes that grace comes in pink purses and brave hearts.